Thank you, Indiana. Thank you very much.
Hello, West Virginia. What a place.
I'm thrilled to be back.
The final weekend before the midterm election.
The president, he's out pounding on the campaign trail. His agenda, it is working.
How were those jobs numbers today?
The biggest raise in average pay in almost a decade highlights a stellar jobs report.
A whopping 250,000 more new jobs added in just the month of October. Unemployment, well, it's at a 49-year low.
The economy, he's as good as I've ever seen in the first term, and he's not even halfway through it yet.
Republicans are all, look, the economy's so good. Where do you think that started? When did that start?
Lie after lie. Unlike President Obama, we live by a different motto. It's called promises made, promises kept.
Go get 'em, Donald.
Big Apple in the big city to talk about elections.
Kind of media swamp. This is a media swamp.
It is.
Sure, but it's a huge weekend. We've got this.
It is.
Big weekend. Lots of things exciting happening.
And months. And you heard Bobby Knight there, the legendary Indiana coach. The context was he was saying there used to be a president. We said, give him hell, Harry. Now we say, go get him, Donald.
Yeah.
And boy, has he gotten out there on the road.
Harry Truman is what he was referring to.
As a college basketball fan myself, seeing Bobby Knight.
Wasn't it
very
in the
exciting.
Hoosiers arena too? I think I saw jerseys in the rafters. We'll have to add, you know what? We've got Mike Tobin. We'll go to him. We'll ask him that question.
Absolutely.
They call him the campaigner-in-chief. President Trump boosting GOP support after finishing double-header rallies in Indiana.
The president telling the crowd to vote Republican if they want to keep the economy roaring.
Mike Tobin joins us live from Indianapolis with more on the president's message to the Hoosiers. Mike?
Well, good morning, Katie, Pete, and Ed. The president overnighted here in Indiana, one of two stops he's making in the Hoosier State, and that is because the Senate race here is a very important toss-up, so it's getting a lot of his attention. The Republican challenger is Mike Braun, an independent businessman who campaigns as an outsider. He has been neck and neck with the incumbent Democrat Senator Joe Donnelly. The President Trump rallied the base to vote for Braun and give him more support in the Senate. The president's argument buoyed by the new job numbers.
America now has the best economy in the history of our country. In the last month alone, we added another 250,000 jobs and nearly 600,000 Americans returned to the workforce.
Now, the incumbent Democrat out here, Senator Joe Donnelly, has run as a moderate. Analysts say he has to survive in a state that voted so heavily in favor of President Trump. Now, Donnelly boasts that he voted with the president 62% of the time, but Donnelly did vote against the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. That opened a door for Mike Braun and the president to both call him a liberal, saying that he is in touch with the leadership over on the left, out of touch with red state Indiana. The president continues his barnstorming tour today with stops in Pensacola and Belgrade, Montana. Guys, back to you.
All right, Mike.
Thanks.
A lot. I was confused because the arena that President Trump was in, it looked like something a college team would play in. Yeah, I'm often confused.
And there was overflow.
There was overflow.
Yeah.
But in Indiana, basketball's so big that high school arenas can look like college arenas because they care that much.
They have their
about
sports
basketball.
correct.
Amen.
Basketball is my jam.
Mike Braun, the Republican nominee for Senate in Indiana, is going to be live on this program later this hour, so you want to stay tuned for that.
That's right. So he was in West Virginia and Indiana yesterday, as Mike said. But the president is going to go all the way through the finish line for sure in the next couple of days. Today he's going to be in Montana and Florida. Key races there. He'll be in Georgia and Tennessee tomorrow. And then on Monday in Ohio, Indiana, and Missouri. So going back to Indiana, going back to West Virginia, going back to Montana. Some big Senate races, you guys, that he obviously wants to win.
It's looking like the Republicans could pick up a few Senate seats. The House is obviously very much up for grabs. Democrats would have the edge going in because of all of the Republican seats that are toss-ups right now. But in the Senate, it looks like the Republicans have some pretty strong turf.
Well, the president is getting a huge last-minute boost as we go into Election Day. The big jobs report that came out on Friday, 250,000 jobs added, unemployment at a 49-year low, the fastest wage growth since 2009, 32,000 150,000 manufacturing jobs added in October. The October unemployment rate for whites is 3.3%, blacks 6.2%, Asians 3.2%, and Hispanics, I believe, another all-time low of 4.4%. So the country is feeling energized going into Election Day. The White House has certainly been touting this. President Trump tweeting about it yesterday. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders saying yesterday, President Trump, again, beating all of the critics and all of the expectations for what he's promised.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an incumbent president running on your track record, all you want on November 1st are these kind of job numbers. I mean, the Wall Street Journal this morning, the headline on top, wages rise as hiring accelerates. And it's not just 250,000 jobs. It's the jobs they told us were never coming back. I mean, 5,000 manufacturing jobs added in October. 65,000 total mining jobs have come back in 2008 alone. 1,000 manufacturing jobs added a day in October. These are real numbers. We were told they're never coming back.
And it would have an impact mining in a state like Montana, manufacturing in Indiana, Ohio, where he's going in these final days. That's why I'm so glad the president a few days ago called the media into the White House, said, I want to address the nation on a topic that everybody cares about and is most important in this election. And he talked about immigration.
Well, that's a big
he didn't talk about the economy all week. Instead, he talked all week about the immigration.
He's been talking about the economy all the time. The media never reports it. Well, they don't report it.
When did he brought everybody to the Roosevelt Room and said, I want to address the nation.
So look at these huge job numbers are splashed across the top of the Wall Street Journal. I don't have my failing New York Times today, but I got to believe it's not all the way across the top. If anything, it's one column, barely mentioned, and these other networks, MSNBC and CNN, others, they don't. Ed, seriously.
Should he have talked about it a little sooner?
Do they ever talk about it?
The White House has repeatedly been talking about the economy over and over again. It's interesting how the media focuses on the immigration comments that he makes. Asks certain questions about that.
Yeah, but he thinks that's the winner
Of course he focuses on it, but he also focuses on the economy. And this idea that GOP candidates on the campaign trail have not been talking about the economy just isn't true, and the president knows that as he goes and campaigns for all these people across the country.
But Ed, you know.
I was trying to trigger Pete this morning. Trying to get some reaction.
No, I just want to get him a little excited this morning.
He's so good at it. I got to give him credit. But he believes, and you would acknowledge, that he thinks immigration's a winning issue too. I mean, he says on the campaign trail, this is the campaign of Kavanaugh, the caravan, law and order, the economy, and common sense.
Has the caravan made it here yet?
Well, it's on its way. The military's down there. We're talking about it. Yeah, but it is a symbol of the way the establishment on the left and right have not taken the immigration policy seriously for decades.
Well, my point is he does have a strong economy. It's taken him a while. Yes, he's talked about it before, but he has reframed these midterms around immigration, not the economy. It might work for him, because I agree with you that it worked well for him talking about cracking down on illegal immigration in 2016. We'll see if it works in 2018. Interesting that with this strong economy that the president has, we've got somebody who doesn't want to leave the stage in Barack Obama and wants to take credit for the economy that this president has right now.
Yeah, Barack Obama taking credit for it.
Take a listen to this.
Republicans are all, look, the economy's so good. Where do you think that started? They're talking about how, look how many jobs we created. The economy created more jobs in the last 21 months that I was in office than it did in the 20 months after I left office. When truth doesn't matter, when people can just lie with abandon, democracy can't work. And that's what's happening at the highest levels.
Well, you know, the other issue that voters do care about, and both parties will agree on this in all seriousness, is health care.
Yeah.
Okay? For better or for worse.
Well, that's what the Democrats are trying to
Speaking of lying about health care, I think Barack Obama knew a few things about that.
He talked about keep your doctor, keep your plan. And now he's saying that this president is lying. The last president had trouble with the truth when it came to health care.
Yeah, when Donald Trump took
let alone Benghazi and plenty of other things we could talk about. But this is the President Trump called that out yesterday. Watch.
I heard him talk about telling the truth. He was talking about you have to tell the truth. And yet 28 times he said you can keep your doctor if you like your doctor. You can keep your plan if you like your plan. They were all lies. Lie after lie. Broken promise after broken promise. That's what he did. Unlike President Obama, we live by a different motto. It's called promises made, promises kept.
We talked about the lies portion of the Obama clip, but right over Barack Obama's right shoulder was Andrew Gillum, an outed socialist, So if you think that's the future, that's
out it or admit it. That's the question.
He's been winning in the polls. He's been winning.
No, it's tight there in Florida.
The only vote that counts is Tuesday. Yep. But Gillum, despite being an avowed socialist, is winning in Florida.
Well, the thing about this election is because President Obama has gotten back on the stage, he is campaigning with these candidates, which is something he didn't really do a lot of when he was president, as we saw the Democratic Party depleted under his leadership. It'll be an interesting referendum on him as well, whether his candidates are successful on Election Day versus President Trump's.
Yeah, we'll be paying a lot of attention to that contrast for sure.
All right, well, now turning to your headlines, authorities in Oregon are under fire for freeing an illegal immigrant who is now accused of murdering his wife. ICE officials say authorities in Portland released this man knowing he was wanted for deportation. The sheriff's office claiming they never received a detainer request. The Mexican national was arrested in March on domestic violence charges. 7 months later, he admits to dumping his wife's body in a ditch. And 2 people are dead and 5 others injured when a gunman opened fire inside a Florida yoga studio. Authorities identifying the shooter as Scott Beer Lee. The 2 people killed were a student and a faculty member at Florida State University.
Several people inside fought back and tried to not only save themselves but other people, which is a testament to their courage.
The gunman killed himself at the scene and police are looking for a motive. And President Trump invoking a Game of Thrones catchphrase to put Iran on notice.
I know this is hard for you, but winter is coming.
Sanctions on Iran's oil, shipping, and banking sectors will be restored Monday over concerns of its nuclear program. The president restoring penalties lifted under the 2015 Obama-era nuclear deal. And Alec Baldwin is facing assault charges after allegedly punching a man in the face over a parking spot. It happened outside his home in New York City. The president reacting to the actor's arrest.
I wish him luck.
Baldwin denies the allegations and is in court November 26th, right after Thanksgiving. The habitual hothead has regularly gotten into trouble with the law, including scuffles with paparazzi and screaming matches with reporters. Those are your headlines.
Tucker had a great line last night. He said the Democrats have spent almost 2 years now trying to put the real president in jail. They've been unsuccessful. Now the fake president from Saturday Night Live, he may be going to jail.
Yeah, he was detained for a little while.
They should do an SNL skit on that.
They really should.
The chances of that are zero.
Zero.
Yeah, they won't make fun of themselves.
Right. All right, well, moving on, the midterms. They're now just 3 days away, and our next guest breaks down 3 races that could surprise everyone on November 6th.
And Jane Fonda. Yes, not one to shy away from controversy. How Hanoi Jane is reaching back in history to, yes, of course, take a swipe at President Trump. That's coming up.
Welcome back. Well, voters head to the polls in just 3 days, and in 3 key states, pundits and the media could be in for big surprises. 3 blue states. Traditionally, here to break down the key states that could surprise everyone is former Trump campaign pollster and president of McLaughlin and Associates, John McLaughlin. John, thanks for being here this morning.
Thanks,
so normally we'd be talking about purple states or red states. Right. Now we're talking about Connecticut, New Jersey, and Minnesota. Break down 3 races that could surprise some people.
Well, Bob Stefanowski, I polled for Bob Stefanowski.
In Connecticut.
And he's an outsider businessman who came in because it's his state, he grew up there. He wanted to make sure that they turn around. They've had 8 years under Dan Malloy that they've raised taxes, massive tax increases. Their economy shrank. Clear choice between Bob Stefanowski, who wants to cut taxes, and Ned Lamont has said he wants to raise taxes and create tolls.
So you're saying, the economy front and center this morning, we're talking about the great jobs numbers, but in Connecticut, economic growth, they're 46. They're 46 in road quality. Their pension system is terrible. Population growth, people are fleeing the state. So for voters there, they're looking for a businessman to take control.
Yes, and we just went ahead in the polls. Sacred Heart University poll has us going ahead. Quinnipiac had us in the margin of error, matched our surveys. So Bob Stefanowski right now is surging on his message of cutting taxes.
Yeah, and if the blue wave's coming, it may not be coming to Connecticut.
But we got to get out and vote Tuesday.
Very true. New Jersey, the Senate race there. Break it down for us.
Bob Menendez, his supporter, his backer, was convicted of bribery charges. And Menendez got off. And what the interesting part is Menendez is hovering about 50%. It's another blue state, deep blue state that the Democrats take for granted. But Bob Eugen's come in and he's made an issue of the fact that this guy flew to the Dominican Republic with underage teenage prostitutes. And the Democrats, there's a big hypocritical angle here. The Democrats are counting on women voting for them, but a lot of women are just not going to be able to vote for this guy.
Has Eugen's message been able to break through? I mean, a lot of money pouring into this race.
Well, he's put up a lot of money himself. He has the resources. So he's been doing this himself, and basically Chuck Schumer, to try to keep the Senate, is pouring in tens of millions of dollars to try to save Menendez at the last minute. So
money they could be spending elsewhere if they weren't focused on New Jersey.
Right. Well, they're afraid they're going to lose because it's a big issue. Again, it's the hypocrisy of the whole issue with the Democrats with women. How can you say you support women and then ask them to vote for Bob Menendez right now?
All right. So let's double down on that hypocrisy of the Me Too moment and move to the Attorney General's race in Minnesota.
Right.
Keith Ellison, a lot of credible allegations against him. He's running for Attorney General. He's in a tight race.
Right. And with Keith Ellison, there's been polls that have him behind or just maybe a little ahead. They have some comeback. But the Democrats are pouring in resources there to save him. He's the #2 guy at the Democrat National Committee, or was, and now he wants to be the leading law enforcement person in Minnesota as the Attorney General. So again, the Republican Doug Wardlow has been ahead in some of the most reputable polls as it's closing in. So you have women voters saying, I can't vote for this person. And there's been also, besides that, there's been some controversial photos and appearances he's made with Louis Farrakhan.
Sure.
And after Pittsburgh, with that tragedy there, is Farrakhan with his anti-Semitic statements. How could you vote for Keith Ellison?
He still hasn't distanced himself clearly from that. He's also the one that's been wearing shirts about open borders and, I mean, indicative of the way the Democrats view immigration these days.
Right, and he would be the Attorney General in Minnesota.
The top cop in Minnesota.
Yes.
All right, well, who'd have thought we'd be looking at Connecticut, New Jersey, and Minnesota?
Yes.
I know you're polling in a lot of other races as well. How do you feel about overall the status of the House right now?
The status of the House, it really depends upon turnout on Tuesday. You have 78 competitive House races, of which 67 are Republican. And there's like 35 toss-ups.
Yep.
And the vast majority of them are Republicans, and they're all in the margin of error, or they're all dead even right now. It's going to come down. The president is barnstorming the country right now precisely to get the Trump voters out. Midterm election, you'll only have 90, maybe 100 million voters out at most. There's 63 million Trump voters we have to get out. And that's the key to winning. And the president's doing the job. He's lifting them up.
No one can say he didn't go all the way through the finish line, no doubt.
Yes.
John, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Pete.
Good stuff. All right, well, as the migrant caravan marches closer to the border, more than half of voters in battleground states think not enough is being done to stop illegal immigration. Well, the Center for Immigration Studies here to break down the new numbers on the border coming up next. Plus, are Democrats ditching Bill Clinton? He's not been out there on the trail much. The buzz from the trail coming up.
Some quick headlines. The 3 congregations that worshipped at Tree of Life Synagogue, where 11 people were killed last week, they'll hold services in a prayer vigil today to mark the time of the massacre 1 week ago. Funerals for all 11 victims were held this past week. Now, the suspected shooter pleaded not guilty and could face the death penalty. Meanwhile, the man accused of sending suspicious packages to prominent Democrats will go on trial in New York. Cesar Sayoc faces up to 48 years in prison. This as the FBI finds another similar suspicious package at a California mailing facility addressed to billionaire Tom Steyer. No injuries reported in the cases. Pete?
Yep, thanks, Ed. Well, the president's hard stance on immigration in the final days before the elections may determine who will control the House of Representatives.
A new poll found that 54% of voters in battleground districts say the U.S. should do more to try and stop illegal immigration, compared to the 21% who say we should take less action and the 25% who say we are already taking appropriate steps.
So is the president on the right side of the immigration debate? Joining us now with the latest findings from this new poll is from the Center for Immigration Studies, Stephen Camarada. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
So there is a question hanging over these midterms that we were talking about at the top of the hour. Should they have been framed around the strong economy for the president? Should they be framed around cracking down on illegal immigration? Kavanaugh and the caravan, as the president has been saying. What say you?
Well, it's certainly true lots of issues matter to voters, but what this latest poll shows is particularly in battleground states, most people want the country to do more to control illegal immigration. And that's true nationally as well. And the poll also found strong majorities want to try to interdict this caravan of illegal immigrants moving through Mexico before it gets to the U.S. border. Very few people seem to want them to be released into the United States while we process their asylum claims. So it does seem that the president is at least hitting on something that particularly voters in these more moderate or battleground districts really want. They want lots of immigration enforcement.
So, Stephen, that's a big number, 54% of voters, 84% of Republicans feel that way. But as Democrats face this issue, do they have, I mean, is it a messaging problem? Is it a policy problem? How do they explain their position on dealing with illegal immigration?
Well, the Democratic Party over the last few decades, it wasn't always like this, but just to give you an example, President Clinton appointed Barbara Jordan to look at the immigration issue in the 1990s. She chaired a commission, and it came out with some pretty forceful things on immigration enforcement in the 90s. But that Democratic Party doesn't really exist very much. Lots of Democratic voters want enforcement. What the Democrats see the immigration issue more as a civil rights issue. People kind of have a right to come to the United States, and it's wrong to make people go home even when they're here illegally, unless they commit a serious crime. That's essentially the Democrats' position.
Yeah, California Senator Dianne Feinstein actually is on tape from the early 1990s talking about the strain that illegal immigration puts on the American system, both the state level and the federal level. But Stephen, my question for you is the White House is arguing that, look, these caravans are getting a lot of attention and we obviously want to stop them, but there is an influx of thousands of illegal immigrants across the southern border with Mexico every single week. Can you talk about how that impacts people's view of illegal immigration?
Yeah, I don't think the public's even quite aware of that, but people sort of still have a sense that things are out of control, and they are. Illegal immigration, as best we can tell from the demographic data, isn't as big as it was maybe 15 years ago. But it still looks like maybe 400,000 new people are settling in the country illegally each year. Maybe half of that is people successfully crossing the border illegally, and the new numbers look to be higher than that. And then maybe another 200,000 people overstaying temporary visas. And the public may not know those numbers, but they still, have a basic sense that illegal immigration is out of control, though it may not be as bad as it was a decade or so ago.
I'd like to talk to the 21% in your poll who said we shouldn't take more action. How could you possibly say we can't take more action on illegal immigration real quick?
Well, I think people sort of have a sense that because the media tends to focus on what are sometimes very sympathetic cases of someone's being deported, they see that as typical. But most Americans know that, for example, we have 500,000 people in the U.S. or more, the deportation absconders, who've been ordered deported, and we never even followed up. So the public has a sense we're not doing enough.
All right. Stephen Camarada, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, you saw him on stage with President Trump in Indiana last night. So will it give Mike Braun the boost he needs to win his big Senate battle? The candidate, he joins us live next.
Plus, one of Justice Brett Kavanaugh's accusers admitting now she made the whole thing up. Now she could be in some big-time trouble.
And how 16-year-olds could soon help decide who becomes president. Oh, dear. Straight ahead.
Don't rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat. Don't tip the boat over. Rock the boat. Don't rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat.
On election night, there's only one place to be.
America's election headquarters.
In this critical moment, the balance of power up for grabs. Everything is at stake, and only one news team brings America the coverage they trust.
This election is special because power in Washington hangs in the balance.
It is a battle to the finish. Both sides want control.
Every result, every perspective, on a night that could change the political course of the country. No one does election coverage like...
But when you do that, that is the sign of a lack of message and a terrible campaign. For an incumbent to have to do that, of course, his campaign's been run from the get-go by Chuck Schumer. And if you've seen the Kavanaugh hearings, all of these Senate races have that rawness to it. And again, it goes back to that's all they've got.
Well, Mr. Braun, but it could be a problem for you because in some polls, the Libertarian candidate, Lucy Brenton's polling at 5%, at 7%. That's outside the margin of errors you would assume if Libertarians they would normally go for you. So how do you overcome this message and resonate with conservatives who might cast a vote for a libertarian?
Well, I think two ways. The fact that I'm a small government conservative, a lot of what we believe in parallels that of a libertarian. And the other thing is, here in Indiana, whenever you really dig into that libertarian vote, ironically, it splits about 50-50 because your social issue voters tend to be libertarian and roll Democratic, and the fiscal conservatives. So everything we've seen, it doesn't break 100% away from me as a conservative. So we feel good about it, and I think when people get into the voting booth for their vote to really count, they'll come my direction.
All right, well, we reached out to Joe Donnelly's campaign and have not heard back from him, but we appreciate you, Mr. Braun, for coming on today. Thank you so much.
Sir.
We'll be watching for
Thanks for
Tuesday.
having me.
I wish Donnelly would accept our invite.
We're running out of time.
I know.
Until Tuesday. Come on, sir. Senator,
love to have you tomorrow.
Come on tomorrow. We'll have you on.
We don't bite. Anyway, turning now to your headlines, we begin with extreme weather. One person is dead and another missing after heavy rain and strong winds force a 50-foot wall to collapse. It happened inside an Amazon warehouse in Baltimore. Severe weather slamming parts of Maryland overnight, with a tornado reportedly hitting a TJ Maxx store. Luckily, nobody was hurt. And another Kavanaugh accuser could be in hot water. Senator Chuck Grassley asking federal authorities to investigate more potentially false statements. A woman named Judy Monroe Layton recently recanting sexual assault allegations made against Justice Kavanaugh. She told Senate investigators that the accusation was just a ploy to get attention. Kavanaugh has denied all the allegations against him. And actress Jane Fonda compares President Trump to Hitler while speaking at the Women's Media Awards in New York. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Fonda said, quote, "If you've read anything about the rise of the Third Reich and Adolf Hitler, you will see the parallels. Attacking the media is the first step in the move towards fascism." And Democrats are apparently saying no to Bill Clinton ahead of the midterms. Liberal lawmakers have reportedly stopped asking the former president to campaign for them. According to the New York Times, he has appeared at a handful of private fundraisers but has been missing from the public campaign trail. Clinton's checkered past is now seen as a liability for Democrats. And those are your headlines.
All right.
Yep.
I was waiting for Steve to jump in.
Leave that one right there.
All right, well, more on that severe weather. Over to Rick Reitman.
Yeah, Rick, what do you got?
Yeah, guys, a lot of severe weather the last few days, and we're going to have another batch of it, I think, Monday to watch out across parts of the plains again. This is a look at the last 24 hours of the radar picture. Tornadoes yesterday across parts of Florida. That front has mostly moved through, so you're going to be dealing with a much better day, a cool start to the day. Big rain overnight across parts of the mid-Atlantic, northeast, a couple tornadoes there as well, and then a new storm that's falling out across parts of the far northern Rockies, and that's moving into the Central Plains today. That's bringing some rain, and it's also bringing a little bit of snow. Temperature-wise, nobody all that bad. Certainly chilly across the far northern areas of the northern plains and around the Great Lakes. But look at this. We're still into the 50s. Temps are going to plummet today across parts of the northeast. Take a look at this. It's the marathon tomorrow. Remember, guys, we get an extra hour of sleep tonight. The clocks roll back, which is good if you're running a marathon, I think.
And if you're not.
And from what I hear, temps right around 50 degrees is pretty perfect for running a marathon. So that's really good. Hey, one last thing real quick. Take a look at this map. This is Tuesday. Got a big storm that's going to be brewing around the Great Lakes towards the East Coast. Could have some impacts on the elections. A lot of rain and a lot of wind with this storm.
Rick, are you running the marathon?
Never in a million years. It's a thing I would never even consider.
But the weather's good.
Yeah, never ever.
Try it out.
Yeah, so boring.
Hurt yourself for 26 miles.
Yeah, and boring.
I know, that's the thing.
Just
sorry to
boring.
all the wonderful marathon runners that are viewers
I know, I'm
as
so
well.
impressed with it.
You can have headphones, Rick.
Yeah.
Listen to a podcast.
I don't have any music I would want to listen to for
26
hours.
miles. Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Meanwhile, the president warning voters what will happen if Democrats take back the House.
A vote for any Democrat is a vote to put the radical Democrats in charge of the House, the Senate, and every congressional committee.
Well, he noted Chairwoman Maxine Waters would be overseeing banking and financial issues. We'll look at the rest of the potential chairmen and women next.
That's right. Plus, TV's Todd Pyro is having breakfast with friends in West Virginia after President Trump's rally. Todd, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. The president was here talking about the big issues that matter to the nation and to West Virginia. So we're talking to these guys about the issues that matter to them. That's coming up in a few minutes when Fox and Friends on a Saturday morning returns. And I've got French toast.
Only 3 days remaining in the battle over control of the House and the Senate, but what happens if Democrats win back the House?
Well, a lot will happen. We'll show you which ranking representatives will become chairs of some key congressional committees and what all of that would mean. Here to break down a few of them, Kelsey Harkness. She's from the Daily Signal and host of the podcast Problematic Women. Good morning.
Morning, Kelsey.
Good morning.
So let's start with the House Financial Services Committee. The current chair, Jeb Hensarling. Maxine Waters would take over there. Talk a little bit about some of the differences in terms of policy.
Yeah, well, Maxine Waters is someone who's been called the most corrupt member of Congress, and she would be overseeing the nation's financial institutions. She also, of course, has been leading the charge calling for the impeachment of President Trump, and also on the front lines of calling for the targeted harassment of Republicans. So I think she would not only do some very damaging things to the economy, be getting in the way of rolling back issues like Dodd-Frank, but she wouldn't be setting a good example for civility, which is what we need.
Yeah, we've seen Maxine Waters say a lot of things. She's now vowing political payback. So let's listen to her, and then we'll get your reaction.
I will be the first African American, the first woman to chair the powerful Financial Services Committee. That's all of Wall Street. That's all the insurance companies. That's all the banks. What I'm going to do to you is fair. I'm going to do to you what you did to us.
Wow, sounds like revenge to me, Kelsey.
It does sound like revenge, and to hear that from a leader in Congress, I don't think is healthy on either side.
Yeah, let's talk about the Intel Committee, because in the House, you know, Devin Nunes has been a frequent guest on this program. He's gotten all kinds of grief from the left for allegedly being sort of the president's water boy, and they said, oh, if he wanted to release all this sensitive information about FISA and all of the rest, and the sky was going to fall. And the sky hasn't fallen. Instead, it seems like he's revealed a lot of troubling things.
He has, and I think when it comes to the Intelligence Committee, we know Democrats would double down on this Russia collusion investigation, which Republicans found no evidence thereof. Democrats released a 98-page report calling for leads they don't believe were looked into. So this really would be a committee producing another one more manufactured scandal that would put Trump on the defense instead of enabling him to move policies forward that will be helpful for all Americans.
Well, to your point, Adam Schiff would take over the committee, and he's been someone who's just talked about Russia basically nonstop.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, I think this would be a manufactured scandal. It would be a waste, more importantly, of taxpayer dollars, because we have already looked into this Russia collusion scandal, again, lack thereof, from multiple different angles. We're waiting for the most recent results, but the House committee has already looked into this, so it would be a waste of time and money for him to lead that again.
You know, Kelsey, the president in the final days of this campaign in this election cycle has promised another round of tax cuts for the middle class. The current House Ways and Means Committee chairman, Kevin Brady, has helped the president get that through the first time. His likely Democratic replacement would be Richard Neal. How can Republicans function and pass tax reform if they don't have control of this House committee?
This is a very powerful House committee, and specifically one that the Trump administration, if Republicans are able to hold the House, they can put forward things like Tax Reform 2.0, which can stimulate the economy and make it perform better than it's even doing right now. The problem is, if Democrats take control of this committee, they'll be a roadblock in passing any further legislation on the tax reform front. They also could pose a problem for passing or ratifying NAFTA 2.0. And also this committee, not many Americans know, actually has the power to investigate personal tax reforms of any American, including the President of the United States, meaning the President could face investigations from multiple different committees.
Good point. Kelsey Harkness, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
right, well, former President Obama slamming President Trump's decision to deploy troops to our border.
They're even taking our brave troops away from their families for a political stunt.
But guess what? He did the same thing.
Oh, really?
Dan Bongino is here to react live next hour.
We got it on tape, too. And what did the voters think of President Trump's rally yesterday? TV's Todd Pyro having breakfast with friends in West Virginia. We're going to go to him next.
Only 3 days remaining in the battle over control of the House and the Senate, but what happens if Democrats win back the House?
Well, a lot will happen. We'll show you which ranking representatives will become chairs of some key congressional committees and what all of that would mean. Here to break down a few of them, Kelsey Harkness. She's from the Daily Signal and host of the podcast Problematic Women. Good morning.
Morning, Kelsey.
Good morning.
So let's start with the House Financial Services Committee. The current chair, Jeb Hensarling. Maxine Waters would take over there. Talk a little bit about some of the differences in terms of policy.
Yeah, well, Maxine Waters is someone who's been called the most corrupt member of Congress, and she would be overseeing the nation's financial institutions. She also, of course, has been leading the charge calling for the impeachment of President Trump, and also on the front lines of calling for the targeted harassment of Republicans. So I think she would not only do some very damaging things to the economy, be getting in the way of rolling back issues like Dodd-Frank, but she wouldn't be setting a good example for civility, which is what we need.
Yeah, we've seen Maxine Waters say a lot of things. She's now vowing political payback. So let's listen to her, and then we'll get your reaction.
I will be the first African American, the first woman to chair the powerful Financial Services Committee. That's all of Wall Street. That's all the insurance companies. That's all the banks. What I'm going to do to you is fair. I'm going to do to you what you did to us.
Wow, sounds like revenge to me, Kelsey.
It does sound like revenge, and to hear that from a leader in Congress, I don't think is healthy on either side.
Yeah, let's talk about the Intel Committee, because in the House, Devin Nunes has been a frequent guest on this program. He's gotten all kinds of grief from the left for allegedly being sort of the president's water boy, and they said, if he wanted to release all this sensitive information about FISA and all of the rest, and the sky was going to fall. And the sky hasn't fallen. Instead, it seems like he's revealed a lot of troubling things.
He has, and I think when it comes to the Intelligence Committee, we know Democrats would double down on this Russia collusion investigation, which Republicans found no evidence thereof. Democrats released a 98-page report calling for leads they don't believe were looked into. So this really would be a committee producing one more manufactured scandal that would put Trump on the defense instead of enabling him to move policies forward that will be helpful for all Americans.
Well, to your point, Adam Schiff would take over the committee, and he's been someone who's just talked about Russia basically nonstop.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, I think this would be a manufactured scandal. It would be a waste, more importantly, of taxpayer dollars, because we have already looked into this Russia collusion scandal, again, lack thereof, from multiple different angles. We're waiting for the most recent results, but the House committee has already looked into this, so it would be a waste of time and money for him to lead that again.
Kelsey, the president in the final days of this campaign and this election cycle has promised another round of tax cuts for the middle class. The current House Ways and Means Committee chairman, Kevin Brady, has helped the president get that through the first time. His likely Democratic replacement would be Richard Neal. How can Republicans function and pass tax reform if they don't have control of this House committee?
This is a very powerful House committee, and specifically one that the Trump administration, if Republicans are able to hold the House, they can put forward things like Tax Reform 2.0, which can stimulate the economy and make it perform better than it's even doing right now. The problem is, if Democrats take control of this committee, they'll be a roadblock in passing any further legislation on the tax reform front. They also could pose a problem for passing or ratifying NAFTA 2.0. And also this committee, not many Americans know, actually has the power to investigate personal tax reforms of any American, including the President of the United States, meaning the President could face investigations from multiple different committees.
Good point. Kelsey Harkness, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, former President Obama slamming President Trump's decision to deploy troops to our border.
They're even taking our brave troops away from their families for a political stunt.
But guess what? He did the same thing.
Oh, really?
Dan Bongino is here to react live next hour.
We got it on tape, too. And what did the voters think of President Trump's rally yesterday? TV's Todd Pyro having breakfast with friends in West Virginia. We're going to go to him next.
Only 3 days remaining in the battle over control of the House and the Senate, but what happens if Democrats win back the House?
Well, a lot will happen. We'll show you which ranking representatives will become chairs of some key congressional committees and what all of that would mean. Here to break down a few of them, Kelsey Harkness. She's from the Daily Signal and host of the podcast Problematic Women. Good morning.
Morning, Kelsey.
Good morning.
So let's start with the House Financial Services Committee. The current chair, Jeb Hensarling. Maxine Waters would take over there. Talk a little bit about some of the differences in terms of policy.
Yeah, well, Maxine Waters is someone who's been called the most corrupt member of Congress, and she would be overseeing the nation's financial institutions. She also, of course, has been leading the charge calling for the impeachment of President Trump, and also on the front lines of calling for the targeted harassment of Republicans. So I think she would not only do some very damaging things to the economy, be getting in the way